Did you enjoy the eclipse?
I mean, I did make sure to go out. I did experience it. It did get dark. I mean, it got
Yes,
dark-ish,
did.
and I did see the sun partially
Locked off. Yeah.
It did. I will say the whole thing around it, it allowed me to think about the fact that there's so much about our everyday existence that we just sort of take for granted, and we don't connect to, like, so, like, I remember a friend of mine once making the observation that we insist on calling it a sunset when we know that it's really us that's moving and the sun is not, but we continue to experience it as if the sun is the thing that's moving. And so, and I do every once in a while allow myself to sort of chuckle at how when the seasons are changing, they're just like something that's happening in our story, as opposed to us being part of this bigger phenomena that we're on this ball that's spinning and it's moving at tremendous speeds around the sun. And but for me, it has to do with what clothing am I going to wear, and what it's going to look out like, what's going to be like in the day in my story. Like, my life is just my story, and all this stuff is happening in my story. And even though we spend time learning about the fact that it's not like that, and we take in the information that and sort of put it somewhere, but we still stubbornly live out our days as if somehow it's all just, I'm the center of the universe and everything's happening in my story. So that every once in a while things happen to sort of shake me out of that for a moment, but then I go right back to the world.
Yes.
Orbits me.
Right.
But it's all my story. It's all my story. So yeah, so yesterday I just briefly mentioned this detail of this mitzvah, which is the mitzvah to honor sages, which is it can every once in a while happen in a larger context, which is when the sage is not part of your life on a day-to-day basis and is not making decisions that are about you. So most of the time when this comes up, I guess it's related to what we were just talking about. Most of the time when this comes up, it's about my narrative. So it's, if it was my parents that I'm honoring and having awe for, so the story I will tell is that this is important for my development. In order for me to understand this kind of chain, that my parents are part of a chain that leads to God, and my teachers are part of a chain that leads to God. And so my honoring or being in awe of my parents, or my honoring and being in awe of my teacher, is really part of a larger story, which is my relationship to God. But there are times when this can be perhaps, I mean, obviously everything is about God, but it's not necessarily always about me. And there could be times when I'm going to find myself having to show deference, to show honor, to show awe to a sage, not because of something in my own story, but because of something in a larger story. So let's say the sage makes a decision that he believes is for the greater good of the Jewish people. Again, I could always say that the impact that it has on my life is still important for my own narrative, but sometimes it's not about me or about me and my relationship with God, but it's about something that's important for the Jewish people. And I could experience it like something like bureaucracy, where there's some kind of rule. What bureaucracy, when I encounter bureaucracy and it's in my way, I tend to think of it as an annoyance, as something that I have to figure out how to work around. But that doesn't necessarily mean that bureaucracy is not good. In fact, you could say that it was part of the disagreement between Moshe and Yisro, that Yisro is telling Moshe that you need bureaucracy. You cannot function. A nation is not going to be able to function, and your role is not sustainable unless you set up a bureaucracy. There have to be certain people that handle, the simple matters, and because of the position you're in, you're going to end up being on the, when the thorny questions come up. But if you're sitting there for every person to come up to for the thorny matters, then you're going to be overwhelmed, and after a while, not able to function. So there's a reason for bureaucracy. So, and Moshe's argument back is, that everybody, I'm suggesting that this could be the argument between Moshe and Yisro. His argument is they're coming to me as part of their connection to God. I'm helping to facilitate their connection to God. And there's a degree of connection to God that I'm able to help them with that nobody else is able to help them with. They could technically be coming for what time is candle lighting, but deep down, they're really just interested in a relationship with God, and I can help facilitate it. And ultimately Yisro wins, because it's just a fact of human life that human beings have a limited time, and that doesn't allow for what Moshe perhaps is hoping is available to every individual via his special connection. So there ends up being this need for bureaucracy, which he ends up conceding to. And so it ends up that in our spiritual life, there also is bureaucracy. And that it's how to exactly manage that is not a science. And there's a letter, I haven't seen this letter in a very long time, but there was a letter from, I think his name was Maimon. He wrote a letter to the Chazon Ish. He was advocating for the setting up of a Sanhedrin. And I think this was in the 1950s. He was advocating for the setting up of a Sanhedrin. And the Chazon Ish he said to him that he thinks his efforts should be put in strengthening the office of the chief rabbi instead of trying to set up a Sanhedrin. And one of the things he said about the Sanhedrin is if you set up the Sanhedrin now, it's going to turn into just a bureaucracy. It's going to be run by low-level technocrats. It's not going to be what you want it to be. And I don't. Who knows what was really going on behind all of that? But there's this, there's this possibility when you have like a kind of need for infrastructure and what I'm calling bureaucracy, but at the same time, you could end up with something that is not what was the goal, which is instead of freeing up the people at the top to do what they do best, you end up creating this kind of world which is run by low-level technocrats, and the people at the top don't get to function at all in their position. And every once in a while, there's been kind of accusations that kind of thing was happening. I remember one time a friend of mine, he was a student of mine at Or Sameach, student/friend at Or Sameach for many years. But he sent me a video of the Lubavitcher Rebbe after his stroke. And in the video, you can see that the Rebbe is waving to the Hasidim. This is post-stroke. And his comment was that the Rebbe can't do that anymore. He doesn't have that kind of mobility. So somebody is waving his hand at the Hasidim. And he felt that this was an example of what I was talking about, which is that you've now got these minders who are sort of holding puppet strings to the Rebbe, and it's really just these minders behind them. And people in various times have said this, because typically about what we call the Gedolim in the yeshiva world, that especially as they get older, because most of them were like functioning in their 90s in their position. And at that time, you were questioning, like, when statements are coming out from them, who are making these statements? Who's really running things? Who's managing it? Who's giving these directives? There were these weird pictures of people going to visit Reb Chaim Kanievsky, of blessed memory, towards the end of his life, because there were periods of time where people would just go in for brachos from him. So I have a copy of this one picture of this guy who's presented him with like a giant matzah. I forgot this guy. It was a solution to some halachic problem, but it was some kind of enormous matzah, and you see him just showing it to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. and in the picture, I'm just imagining he's going, "What is this giant monster?" And the guy's like talking, and there's people around who are like ushering him through, and who knows, like what the results of that meeting were. But it just looked like one of these situations where you've got these minders who are who are around, and how much is really happening from Reb Chaim Kanievsky and how much is happening because of the minders. And so there's this this aspect of the life of a sage, of a rabbinic personality, which is more like communal or public leadership, and they are in a position of making decisions that are affecting the entirety of the community, and we are all supposed to treat those with the same deference and honor and awe that we treat all of their decisions, but because they rose to that position, there ends up being all this bureaucracy around them, and you will see, like when there's a breakdown in the awe and honor that is being shown to some of those directives. A lot of times, this is the excuse. The excuse is that like, who's running the shop? Like, I don't know, that came from him. I don't know who said it. I don't know if that's really his will at this point. And they end up sort of crossing into the role of politicians, and a lot of it has to do with this bureaucracy. And then decisions are being made, and now you're wondering. I found myself often around people or myself in positions where you start to wonder, what is my responsibility in this situation? Am I supposed to be showing awe and deference in this circumstance? I don't, and the tendency is to be drawn into that doubt. Is he even making this decision, or is it a bunch of minders? And who are these people? And then there's also times when they are making a decision at that level that is affecting individuals, but it's clear that they don't know the individual, and they're not doing it for the individual. They're making the decision for the group. And it could cause suffering to the individual because of the needs of the community, and that's also a hard place to be as an individual, because I'm supposed to be showing awe and honor in this situation, but I know that this person isn't concerned about me as an individual, and this decision is harming me or hurting me as an individual. But I am expected to subsume my own self or my needs for the greater good of the community, and that's also a hard place to be. So there are little corners of this. They don't come up that often in a person's life, but there are little places of this that are real tests to this rule. But it is a rule, and you could see why, especially in that latter case, where they know what they're doing, and they are making this decision, and you're expected to show deference, which is going to mean that you're going to suffer because of the need of the greater good. And in that case, we are supposed to subsume ourselves, but it's a very difficult place to be. But mostly, almost every time this comes up, it's coming up in a relationship, and it's coming up with the assumption that the parent or the teacher have your best interest in mind, and that you are going to be better off because you followed through on it. Okay, and then the next one is the mitzvah, kibbud avim. That is that he commanded us to honor our father and mother, and that is maybe exalted saying, you shall honor your father and mother, and the regulations of this commandment have already been explained in the Talmud, primarily in Kiddushin. The language of the Sifra is, which is honor, giving to eat, giving to drink, bringing in, and taking out. Now, why are they giving specifics as to what is honor? Part of why they're giving specifics is this next mitzvah, which is the mitzvah to show awe. That is that he commanded us to fear our father and mother. It's interesting how he writes it, because in the Torah, it writes, fear your mother and father. And it says, honor your father and mother, but when it says fear, it says fear your mother and father, but he writes it as fear your father and mother. And that is that one behave with them according to what is customary to ones who he fears, such as a king. He should be with them like one who's afraid of them, and beware of something coming from himself that will be untoward. That is maybe, in other words, if I act inappropriately, I will be punished. That's your attitude when you're with your parents. That is what it means by fear or awe. And that is maybe exalted saying, a man shall fear his mother and father. Here it is, the order. The language of the Sifra is, which is fear. He shall not sit in his place. He shall not speak in front of him. He shall not contradict his words. The regulation of this commandment have already been explained in Tractate Kiddushin. So part of the reason for giving these specifics is to distinguish between what behavior is fulfilling the mitzvah of awe and what behavior is fulfilling the mitzvah of honor. There's some specific things that you're doing that are a way of showing honor. So you feed them like you would present them their food. You stand before them. Again, yesterday when we were talking about honor, I was suggesting that the word is related to the word which we also use for something that's heavy, and that is that you're demonstrating that they have gravitas, that they have substance. So your way with them, your interaction with them, the way you look towards them, the way you stand, the manner in which you interact with them, are all meant to convey this message that you that you see them and that they have great substance. In some sense, that you orbit them. They don't orbit you, you orbit them. Another eclipse related discussion. So those kinds of things are honor. The kinds of things that are fear are the kind of things where it would, if you did it, it would be considered inappropriate. You don't do that in front of a king. You don't do that in front of your parents. You don't speak that way. You're the kind of thing that you could imagine being rebuked for. If you didn't bow properly, somebody might snicker. I have stories. I have a collection of stories of embarrassing things that I've done in front of great people. But when one of them is that my friend Yerachmiel Yukoson and I, we once went to Bnei Brak, and we took a day to go and meet the great people in Bnei Brak. So one of them was the Vishnitzer Rebbe. We went to see the Vishnitzer Rebbe. So this is like 40 years ago. And so I don't know how it worked out, but everyone we went to, we got into, and we didn't have to wait a long time. We went to see the Vizhnitzer Rebbe, we went to the Stipler, we went to Rav Shach, we went to all sorts of people. So, so we go to the Vizhnitzer Rebbe, and it's my turn. And so I go in, and you write like a kvittel. So you write out who like on a piece of paper, you write out a list of people that you'd like brachos for. If there's somebody who's not well, you'd write who you want a refuah shlema for, but you'd also write for yourself. You want a bracha, for a good shidduch and for hatzlacha and learning, for success in learning. So you'd write all this stuff out and your name. And so you hand the kvittel to his gabbai, and then you have some tzedakah, you present some tzedakah, and then he looks at the kvittel and he gives you a bracha. And then, so he put out his hand like this, like that. And I shook it. So his gabbai started to giggle. I did not know what I'd done, but clearly I had made a mistake. So I went outside, and my friend, Rabbi Yukoson, as we're walking away, he said, it was a good thing that Zish, our friend, had told me you're supposed to kiss his hand. So he had put his hand out for me to kiss it, and I shook it. So that made the gabbai giggle. So there's certain, etiquette of honor, where if somebody doesn't know how to do it, if you're in front of the queen and you don't know how to bow, or you don't know how to curtsy right, and you do something, the other people will giggle. That's because you made a mistake in the honor, like in more of the honor kind of things, the etiquettes of honor. But there's some things if somebody would do, they would rebuke you. They'd sternly rebuke you. Those are going to be in the mistakes in the area of awe or fear. You did something inappropriate in front of them. That's in the awe category, more in the awe category. And we're supposed to have both fear and awe for our parents. And I think that's mostly why, when he's talking about what is awe, what is fear, I think mostly that's where the distinctions are. And that's why they would be listed, because some things you're doing are a fulfillment of this mitzvah, and some things you're doing are a fulfillment of the other mitzvah. And these are examples of mitzvahs that we do where we're expected to act a particular role. This is true to a great degree with davening, where we assume different roles in our davening. Sometimes we're a servant before a king, like in the Shema. Sometimes we might be a child before their parent, which some suggest is more of the attitude during the Amida. And at different times in different prayers, we're supposed to imagine we're perhaps in a different place. Maybe we're at the Beit HaMikdash. Maybe we're or in Jerusalem, or we're in our own home. Rabbi Soloveitchik suggests that we're, I always had this question of, why do we wear shoes in shul? Why do we have shoes in shul? This specifically came out on a trip to India, because in India, when you visit the synagogues, you're supposed to take off your shoes. You're not supposed to stand, they don't stand in the synagogues in their shoes. And everywhere else we do. So, but I had wondered about this before I ever went to India. Why is it that in shul we wear shoes? And I would ask around, and I never got a great answer. And then one time I was reading something, and it referenced something from Rabbi Soloveitchik from Boston, New York, bless his memory. So he had suggested that one of the distinctions between a shul and the Beit HaMikdash is when you go to the Beit HaMikdash, you're in God's house. But when you're in shul, he's in our house. He's in your house. That's an attitude difference. That you're and it has ramifications when you're thinking about each one, and it's expected to. Now, if somebody was an actor and you were in acting school, which I've never been, but I've watched several TV shows about people in acting shows, so I feel like I've been in it. Anyway, so an actor is presented with lines. So somebody could say, what do they really do? They just memorize lines, but clearly that's not what acting is about. Acting is much more than that. You're meant to assume the character. You're meant to become the character, so that when the people are watching you, they experience it as if they're actually in the presence of that person. Now, in order to do that, you have to sort of develop technique. How do I get there? For some people, I've seen, I don't know, who was it talking about this? Recently, there was some actor that was talking about he has to wear the clothing. Once he wears the clothing, it helps him become the person. Forgot who it was. It was just somebody just recently, but they were talking about shoes. They said that they drive producers crazy because they can try on like 50 pairs of shoes for one character until it just feels right, because for them, walking in the right shoes is one of the keys to becoming the character. So they, develop techniques and methods for becoming the character. And the truth is that we should have those because this is when it comes to many mitzvahs, and certainly these mitzvahs, at least initially, we're being asked to play a role. Not just to do a couple of things, but we're being asked to play a role, and there's specific lines, like specific etiquette. There's specific lines. There's specific things we're supposed to be doing. But if you just do them, like if you're supposed to say thank you, and you just say thank you, that say it like you mean it, something might say. But it's sort of funny because this really is such a important part of how we move in a world of Torah, but this is often left out in our training, that it's more than just reading the lines. You're supposed to assume the role. This is especially part of the Haggadah, the Seder. At one point, we're told that you're supposed to feel like you left Egypt. Like this is part of the goal of the experience, that you're supposed to feel like you left Egypt. And then it just sort of says that. But it's certainly assuming that we understand this, that we're supposed to use techniques and methods. I mean, some of them are provided, but we don't recognize that the elements of the Seder are meant to be part of this, the matzah and the karpas and the charoses and the moror and the wine, these are all supposed to help us assume this role, to get into this place, so that at the end we can feel grateful for leaving Egypt. So this is true here. Obviously, it's more than just following the etiquette. I'm supposed to actually experience this, the awe and the honor, and they're supposed to experience it from me, that they are being treated with awe and honor. But there's more than just saying the lines. Okay, I am grateful for this opportunity, and I believe this is the last time we are meeting before Pesach, because it is my hope that Tzipi and I are going to Israel, and we're going to be going to Israel on Monday, so with Hashem's help, and and we're not meeting tomorrow. So I'm going to say goodbye. I'm grateful for having this opportunity to learn together.